You mentioned earlier you were talking about different ways of learning new things. And you were talking about your own processes of
Hmm.
how you've learned things, which is one of the things I thought was really interesting about your book is over the course of the story, you're learning multiple very complex skill sets. And it's very obvious in the way that you tell the story that this is a thing that you had done
Hmm.
before. Like you knew how to go learn a new programming language, learn how to go write contracts. You knew how to go like for a new cryptocurrency. You knew
Yeah.
how to go figure out like, okay, I like there's something going on with NFTs. I'm gonna go like learn the whole landscape and figure out how to navigate it so I can make money with NFT launches. This is clearly a thing that you have done a lot of, and I want to talk about how
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
approach learning new things because I get the sense that you've spent a lot of time mastering this as a skill set.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for picking up on that. It's something that I I never liked school.
That was one of my questions
Yeah.
actually with your relationship school. We'll get
Yeah.
into that too.
It was bad. It was, do the absolute bare minimum to skirt by with B's and like A minuses and, study for the test last minute, get it done, and then thankfully tested well enough to like make up for the okay GPA.
Hmm.
But I was decent at figuring things out. And when I was in college and I realized I wasn't going to get a job off of my degree, I knew I had to get a skill set somewhere
What
else.
did you study?
I studied philosophy.
Okay, that makes
So,
sense.
yeah. But I was really interested in entrepreneurship
Hmm.
and I wanted to do a startup. I did one in college, took a year off to focus on that. Shut that down after a year, but then I
Hmm.
was in my senior year and had no job prospects and the startup had shut down and said, "Okay, I need to figure out some way to get hired." And so got really into content marketing then. And that's when I started my blog and started doing SEO and started trying to learn all of these things. And in that process ended up consuming a ton of information around like self-education and just like picking up skills without being taught them. And I do think it's actually fairly simple at the root, which is just that you need to go find the bare minimum, like minimum viable amount of information to start doing it yourself and then to actually start doing the thing and find a way to like get feedback on it and improve at it. And I think this is why programming in particular is so easy to learn outside of a classroom and so satisfying to people because you can give yourself a basic programming education in a couple of weeks, right? Even if you're starting from zero, you could do just like some basic Python or JavaScript classes and you could be writing little math scripts and things really quickly. And then all you have to do is start trying to increase the complexity, and then you'll run into problems, and then you go Google or ChatGPT how to solve those problems, and now you've learned a new thing, and now you create new problems, and then you look up how to solve, and like you just constantly go through this cycle of like create new problems for yourself, figure out how to solve the problems, and then your like repertoire of what you can intuitively do just slowly gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that works for most skills. There are certain things where it doesn't work. If you want to do rocket engineering, there's going to be a long research process. It's going to be a lot harder for you to just go start experimenting and screwing around. Like if you're doing like deep science, those kinds of things, this is going to work, or advanced mathematics, those kinds of things. But if you're trying to learn programming, learn marketing, learn entrepreneurship, learn writing, right? Like the worst thing you can do is going back to Pressfield, do all of the things that are not the thing, but that are adjacent to the thing, right? Like a lot of writers go to writing workshops or meetups or conferences, or they take a bunch of online, courses and join communities and do all these things. And I just like, I hate all of that because it's not writing, right? It's like you have to actually do the writing. And then as you do it, you find little ways that it can be improved. And then you find ways to improve those little things. And then you just get better one little thing at a time. And you do that for long enough and you get pretty good.
You said that you were reading about or studying content on how to learn things.
Hmm.
Were there things that were particularly formative or useful?
Yeah, in my opinion, the best resource on this is a lesser known but really good book called Peak by Anders Ericsson and Robert Poole. And the story of this book is hilarious because you've probably heard of the 10,000 hour rule from
Mhm.
Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers. And Gladwell got the 10,000 hour rule so wrong, and it was based off of this guy, Anders Ericsson's work, that Anders had to go write his own book to explain what was actually going on with the so-called 10,000 hour rule, because like Gladwell just heavily misinterpreted it in Outliers to kind of like fit that story. And
Mhm.
so then Anders wrote Peak to explain really what's going on with developing mastery in a skill set and like getting really good at something. And it's based on all of this research that he did over his life across like chess and violin and actually early learning and just tons of area like tennis, all these fields of
Mhm.
like, why do people get great at things? What are like child prodigies? Why do people stall out and stop getting better? And then how can you actually design your learning environment so that you are continually improving and not getting stuck at these plateaus. And he's the one who came up with the term deliberative practice, which is a really common term today, but he's really the one who like pioneered that idea through all of that research that he did.
How much so you studied this in college and coming
College.
out of college,
Yeah, yeah.
and then you've rinsed and repeated it many times throughout many ventures in the
Yeah.
subsequent years. How much of it is super deliberate practice versus internalized habit when you discover something new that
Mhm.
you wanna start mastering?
At this point, it's pretty habitual because all it's like if I find something that I want to learn how to do, I basically know how to get started now, right? Like I find just enough that I need to hop into the first project with it, and then I start on the first project, and then I know what to do when I get stuck.
Mhm.
And the things that end up breaking that cycle for me are pretty much always one of two things. Like eventually I get bored and I don't care to improve anymore because this was like a shadow project all along and it's not really the thing that I should be doing anyway and it was just a way to like play a video game almost is sort of the equivalent experience. Or occasionally I'll hit a point where I really don't know how to get any better or what to do from there. And then I kind of like get stuck and abandon it. And so that happened to me with programming a number of times where I'd go down these programming paths and then hit these walls that I just couldn't get through.
Mhm.
And I would need to try to either like find a tutor or maybe take a more advanced course to try to like, build more foundation, things like that. And then I would kind of fall off at that point because I didn't want to take it that seriously. But with GPT, and like Cursor and some of these tools now, it's the most incredible learning tool ever because anytime I get a little stuck, I can ask for help. And the thing that I've learned with it, I was worried about this at first. I was worried that if I was always asking for help of GPT, I would get lazy and the skills would atrophy and I wouldn't actually learn programming. But that hasn't been what's happening. Actually, it's the opposite. It's kind of like it's giving me the answer and I need the help a few times, but then by the 3rd or 4th time, I know how to do it. I've kind of like absorbed it by osmosis and I've been able I'm actually getting better. I'm not getting weaker by relying on it for help. And that's been a really cool experience. And I've been using it for writing too because, you know, ChatGPT and Claude are okay writers. They can do certain types of writing very well, but for writing fiction, they're really not good, right?
No.
But they can do little things here and there that are good, right? It's kind of like, monkeys hacking at the keyboard, like occasionally something good comes out. And so I've actually found that by prompting it the right way and getting feedback and asking it to generate things, 90% of the time it's junk, but there is a 10% in there where it's like, oh, I actually really like how you did this in this context. And kind of like with the memoir example of having a full story that's personal to you makes it resonate more. Seeing an okay writer spit out something good with your material actually does help you get better. And you learn to discern what you like and don't like, and you slowly improve that way. And so that's been a pretty magical tool for learning. I'm really, really excited about that potential.